Hi, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Jamil?
I am great. I'm great. So, the topic of the day is seven DUI lies about Colorado uh, DUIs that you must not believe. So, I'll let you elaborate on that and take it away.
Okay. All right. Well, right. And the first one we're going to address is a very important one, which is that most people, the idea or the concept that most people who are arrested for DUI are guilty. Um, this is a very common misconception. I have to deal with it in almost every single DUI case I go to trial on. For whatever reason, people are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt on other types of crimes, but as far as DUI, everyone just, I think, assumes that you did it. And there's that common assumption made that that's the case. My own personal experience is very different from that. The problem being that there are gradations or levels of intoxication or impairment or not impaired at all, and most people I know who drink also drive. And then the question is when they've crossed that line is a very fine one. And so, in fact, that is a lot of people who are watching this video will probably drink and they drive, and they wonder, well, I know I'm okay. If they were stopped by a police officer and the officer smells alcohol, the bad news I have for you is you're probably not going home. You're not going to pass roadsides. You're not going to. You're not going to. No one passes roadsides. You're going to be arrested and taken in and asked to take a test or not. And what you want to do about that is complicated, and we have many. I've discussed that in many times with you, Jamil, about what you should do in regard to that. But the reality is that your afternoon or evening just took a radical turn, and it's going to happen. That's just what's about to happen, and there's very little you can do about it. It doesn't mean you were intoxicated. I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me up. They've been arrested. They've been charged with DUI. Say they submitted to a blood test. The officer says they failed the roadsides. The officer says that their opinion they were intoxicated. Get the blood test back, and it shows they're not even impaired. That's not an unusual circumstance for me to be in. And that's one of the best news I can give a client when I'm getting their police reports, looking at it, saying, well, guess what? We're going to win this case. I think that each case has to be looked at separately, but that is not true that everyone did it. I would say, what about an example where there's a breath test? There's another example. I have a blood test situation. Sometimes blood tests or breath tests come out, and the results, I hear it so often that I must question it myself. Many times my clients indicate to me and they swear, this is how much I had to drink. And this is the breath test result I got from that breath test machine. Important to know that the breath test machine is that we use here in Colorado. It's the Intoxilyzer, and that company won a bid with the government. It's a proprietary piece of equipment. You can't get this. You can't test this. I have experts who I've retained for DUI cases who will say that they don't believe it's accurate. That you can't. It spits out a number with 3 digits to the .000. It'll point to that third zero. It's not that accurate, and I have people who will say, well, they don't even think it's accurate to the first digit. I have one expert who owns one of these machines and has told me that she thinks it's a good indicator that there's alcohol present, and that's it. If you really want an accurate blood test of your BAC, then you need a blood test. So there's a lot of questions that you have to be asked, and I want to ask those questions of people when they get these. But the automatic assumption that you're guilty and that there's no fight you can give, that is a big lie that a lot of people fall for.
Great, great. Well, let's go on to number 2.
Okay, number 2, a question that I often hear is, how do you win a DUI? Or DUIs can't be won. I mean, why even fight this? It's interesting about that because the one thing about a DUI is that there's a lot of subjectiveness to that. The officer believes something. What other crime can you think of where it relies on someone's opinion? That's pretty unusual. Now, most people have experience with alcohol, and most people have seen people who are intoxicated, and a lot of people think, well, they can't be so easy. It's not so cut and dry. I think it's really important not to be brainwashed into the thought that you can't win these cases. I win these cases. I won one 2 weeks ago that everyone thought I wasn't going to win. And you just have to look at it with fresh eyes. You have to. I think you should talk to a qualified lawyer who specializes in this area because there are there are a lot of issues that could come up. There could be a bad chain of custody with a blood test. There could be a breath test machine that went out of certification. There can be problems with that test machine that came out. I'm not saying they're easy, and I'm not saying that every case can be won, but many cases can be won where you wouldn't think so, and you might be surprised. And with the excessive penalties that are being added every July, you may know that the legislature keeps adding more and more penalties. Every year, all the lawyers do what I do, have a class, and we all go in there, and we all know the law, and we're all commiserating with each other about how much worse it's going to be this year. It's never good news. More and more harsh penalties. So I think, with those harsh penalties, you should really look and see, can this case be won? Because I have seen cases that you wouldn't expect to have won, and it's worked out. So I think you need to. That's certainly a lie that I think that a lot of people believe.
Great.
In my opinion.
Great. Okay, let's go to the next one.
With the third lie that I hear a lot.
Let's do that.
All right. Well, the third one is the DUIs are all the same, or the same as any other criminal case. That's really not true. As I told you already, what other case relies on an officer's opinion? This is the only one. And when there's a murder, well, there's a body, there's going to be DNA, there's going to be confessions, there's going to be interviews, there's going to be a lot. There's not going to be one officer getting up there and saying, well, I think somebody murdered somebody. But the standard of proof is the same in a DUIs and murder case. That is true. But other than that, they're very different from every kind of case. There will be, first of all, there is a separate body, the Department of Revenue, through the Department of Motor Vehicle, who's going to be trying to take your license. So that doesn't happen anywhere else. That's a separate administrative proceeding that has to be handled. There's a lot of administrative law that goes with that, so that's a big distinction. I think, secondly, there's scientific evidence. Not very many cases have a blood or a breath test, and where they have to lay a chain of custody and show that this machine is accurately working and that sort of thing. Secondly, there's oftentimes experts that testify in DUIs, forensic toxicologists, and those specialized fields. And then the training for officers specific to DUI, more than half of their training relates just to DUIs and how to handle them and what to do about them. If they have a lot of different things they do with the DUI than any other case. So they are different than other cases. I've heard people say that they can be the hardest cases to get out of. That is, I think, may be true. It's the hardest trial to win is a DUI trial. I've tried all kinds of trials. I've tried murder trials. I've tried assault, robbery, bank robbery, you name it. I prefer to do DUIs now for a lot of reasons, but they are different, and it's a specialty that I think you need a little experience in to understand these things. So that's a common lie that I often hear, and I have to just tell people that's not true. The fourth lie that I hear a lot is that if you've seen one DUI, you've seen them all, or they're all the same. Now, there are similarities, but I've been doing this as a prosecutor or a defense lawyer for 20 years. So I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of cases, and I can't tell you how many police reports I've read. Every single one of them is different, and every single one of them hangs on slightly different facts. They really are, each one, very different from each other, and you really need to look at it, as I said before, with fresh eyes to get a feeling for that, because something may seem like a lost cause, and I think the prosecution is guilty of making that assumption, and judges can be guilty of making that assumption. So my job is to make sure juries don't make that assumption, or to point out to the prosecutor, look, you think this is like this case, but they're so different, and look at your problems here. So that's a very common, I guess you call a lie that I hear that people tell that kind of bothers me. All right, so moving on to my fifth one, which is any attorney can handle a DUI case. And I see every morning, I go to court almost every day, and almost every day I see a lawyer get up there, and it's clear he's never done this kind of case. And I can't tell you how annoyed the judge gets when he sees somebody who's not a DUI lawyer handling a DUI, and you see a divorce lawyer, and they're not going to be unpleasant to them, but they are going to. Today, for example, someone was asking how to go about a very simple procedure, and the judge is kind of instructing him, but he was telling him, this isn't the place for this. And there's just a specific protocol. First of all, there's the administrative proceeding that goes hand in hand with it. Secondly, there are just myriad of sentencing options and problems and issues that come with different facts and different problems in every case. So you have to know each and every one of those things. and not just sentencing, but what's going to happen to the DMV if you do one thing versus you do another thing. And then, all I could say is that this is. I personally believe in specialties, that lawyers should be specializing when they offer services. And if you're in a real small town, okay, then maybe you have to do all kinds of cases, divorces and DUIs, I suppose. But in a city, any size city, especially one like Denver or Lakewood or Aurora or Douglas County, anywhere in Douglas counties, there are plenty of lawyers who specialize in DUIs only, for a reason that it's a law that changes, as I said, almost every July, and judges who change, and every single judge has its own sentencing scheme, and every single prosecutor's office has its own policy. So you have to know those as well, and try and structure your case in the best way so that you have the best circumstance. So that is another common lie that I oftentimes see people do. All right. Now that brings me to the sixth thing that bothers me. The sixth lie I often hear is that a DUI is a simple charge. I guess I'd have to ask you: is it very simple to lose your job? Is it simple to not be able to drive, not be able to go to another country, not to be able to rent an apartment, not to have a commercial driver's license ever in your life, to go to jail, to have a damaged credit rating that's going to affect your credit rating, to have your insurance increased over your lifetime for thousands of dollars, to have to put a interlock device or a thing in your car that you have to blow in before you can start it, and not just when you start it, but periodically while you're driving it. Is that a big deal? Because that's a part of every single suspension that I deal with at the DMV. To have to report to probation on a monthly or more than monthly basis, to have to give urinalysis on a regular basis, or breath tests on and how about this? For 2 years, having to call a number to tell you whether you need to go to a certain place to give them a test. That's a very common one. To have to ask permission to leave the state to travel for any purpose from your probation officer. I mean, all those are really involved. I've told people before, it's a lot easier for me to get you out of an assault case. Go punch somebody. With the DUI, when you go punch somebody, that's a big deal. You just think about it. You decided to hit him in the face. You're like, I'm going to hit this guy in the face. And for whatever, maybe he has it coming. But you decided, I'm going to punch that guy. And you walk over and you punch him. And you come to court and you hire me as your lawyer. I'm going to handle this case. Well, boy, how much easier is it for me to get out of that case than it is a DUI? There's no driving sanction. You're not going to go to jail. I can probably keep you out of jail. As long as the injuries aren't too severe, your fines and costs aren't going to be that high. Probably get you something that gets you clear your record after that, a deferred judgment or something that gets you out of it. There's a lot of things that can happen. Try that with a DUI, because you're going to find that that is not simple at all. There's going to be scientific evidence lined up against you. Think about it this way: every witness who testifies for the state is going to be trained to be a witness. I taught the school at the academy to teach officers how to testify. No joke. Put them, and they learn. And I was one of the guys who taught them when I was a DA, saying, "Here's how." And we practice. Put them on the stand. Here's a sample report. Give me some testimony, and we correct them on, turn and face the jury. Try to smile. Always wear your uniform. Try not to argue with the defense lawyer. Don't answer yes. Instead of answering yes, try I don't recall, or try and be more specific, or parse the question in two so that you don't have to answer. Make it as hard as you possible. That is a lot different than just somebody coming on the stand and testifying cold. Police officers are trained to testify. And oftentimes they have a huge amount of experience in this one particular area. So, that is not simple. That, in fact, you're looking at a professional witness. They've got, they literally have experts on call who they call up and put on the stand to talk about forensic toxicology, for example, or how well this breath machine works, or blood tests. So again, that one is much less not simple. In fact, it's much more complicated. You got your hands full with some of these professional witnesses, and so that's why I think maybe that's a specialty you should handle. And this is closely linked to my final concern, which is people oftentimes think of DUI as a minor offense. And in the state of Colorado, it's called a traffic misdemeanor. And so other misdemeanors would be assault in the first degree, some kinds of trespass, You know, does it sound bad? Well, this is a misdemeanor. First of all, you don't have a driving record for those other charges. Anytime anybody, every time you get a license, every time you get stopped by a police officer, he pulls up and he looks at your driving record. Every time you talk to an officer on the side of the road, by the time he walks up to your car, when they say, "I'll be right back," and they go back to their car and it takes them a while, they're running your DMV record. They're looking and saying, "Oh, got a DUI." And they'll look at you. What time is it? Is he still wearing work clothes? No, he's not. It's Friday. It's 11 o'clock. Have you been drinking, sir? So, I mean, that's what's going to happen to you. So certainly that's not minor. And then, of course, what other minor offense can stop you from I've had people lose their jobs because they lost their license. I've had people lose their jobs because they couldn't get to work. Even if it's a small minor case and your BAC is pretty low, boy, you're still risking losing your license, and you know, up to anywhere from 4 months to 2 years, you might have to put an interlock device in your car and blow in it while you're trying to leave work. And even then, before you get that, there's either a 1 month or 2 month where you're not going to drive at all. So how are you going to? What if it's in the middle of winter? Or what if you're one of my clients who live in a rural area, like out in Castle Pines? I have a client out there, and boy, I tell you, there's no bus service, and he works in Denver, drives every day. So these can be life-altering situations. And then I'm not even talking about the extensive incarceration that is now being handed down for second offenses or for higher BACs or for whenever there's an accident. Each of these cases are exacerbators that people put someone in jail for. And that I've had people, they're the sole provider for their and caretaker for an elderly parent, or they're a single mom with 3 kids. That is very common, and very few other criminal charges that I see and I dealt with as a DA, or I still see today, carry that kind of ramification. So I think more important than that, it's a very important charge. And to add to that, law enforcement believes that this is their #1 traffic enforcement priority. All of those police cars you see, everyone you see on the road, those are traffic officers. They're not detectives working a beat. You wouldn't see those guys. These guys are simply there for traffic enforcement. Every single police car you see, and their #1 concern, #1 above all else, is DUIs. So if you add that to the mix, and specially trained officers out in force trying to stop you from or policing anyone who's suspected even of drinking and driving, even though it's legal to drink and drive, well, that is not simple. That's extremely challenging. So that's one of the reasons I really like DUI law. It is challenging. It is, you know, I'm not saying it's fun for me. It's just a challenge, and you know, something that I like doing. I enjoy my job when I'm doing it, especially because I'm helping people who desperately need that help at that point in time when people don't think about this. They always think, well, you take a breath test or a blood test. Well, before you're asked to take a blood or a breath test, you're in the back of a patrol car. Your hands are cuffed behind you. That is a cage. Those doors don't open. You've already been arrested out in front of everybody. That's before you even get to take a blood or breath test. That is significant. It's the worst experience that most people are ever going to have with law enforcement or government. And so, therefore, it's not simple, and it's not a minor thing. It's an extremely important thing, and it's one, in fact, that all of us risk by following the law, by drinking and driving as you're allowed to do. Each of us risks that every time we drive. So, you know, there's a whole lot there. And rather than it being simple, I guess I would say it's. I think they're the most complicated cases you can do as a lawyer, in my opinion. And I've done a lot of different kinds of criminal prosecutions and defenses. In my mind, the DUI is the toughest. Those are my 7 gripes or 7 lies that I'd like to address, Jamil, basically in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Everyone got a lot out of that, and we'll be talking to you soon. Have a great day, David.
Thank you, Jamil. Talk to you soon.